Hi guys, welcome to Vesna TV Cooking. Thank you so much for stopping by. Today I'm sharing with you a mega video of my favorite desserts. We're making some wafer cookies. So let's get started. Okay, so this recipe is a little bit more involved, but still kind of easy to do. And like very basic ingredients. You need some butter, sugar. This is called plasma keks. Now this is from Serbia. It's from Europe. It's basically like a ground baby biscuit or something like that. The closest thing that we have here in Canada, if you don't go to the European store, is ground graham crackers. But if you live in Ontario, there are plenty of European stores where you can purchase this. It's called plasma. I'll show you what it comes in a box, but I'll show you what it looks like. I'll link it. Well, I'll show you in here in the next clip. I just don't have the box anymore because I usually dump it in a glass jar. You need some cocoa. And then you need these guys. So these are wafer sheets. So they're just, I don't know, sheets of wafer crackers. Again, I buy these at the European store. Food Basics may have it. I've never actually looked there. But I buy it at Italo Foods, which is just like a local European store. I'm not sure if the grocery stores like Food Basics or Zehrs have them, but I know the European stores have them for sure. So you can buy those there, and they're fairly inexpensive, like $1.59. So you need 8 eggs in total, and you need to separate the whites and the yolks, and you have to cook both on a double broiler, but I'll talk about that in a minute. So first you're going to mix the yolks with the sugar, and then you're going to cook on a double broiler just a little bit, and I'll time it for you so that way you know how long. And then you're going to add the butter after. So I've separated the eggs and the yolks and the whites. I got a little bit of yolk in here, unfortunately. Hopefully it'll be okay. First time making this recipe and sharing it with you. Brave woman I am. So now I have a different helper, and he's going to help me with the yolks here. And then we're going to add the 200 grams of sugar into here once all the yolks are scrambled. So then on whatever kind of double broiler you have, once you've mixed them, so I'm going to show you what it looks like when I've mixed this. So it's quite thick. I used a hand mixer, like an electric hand mixer, to mix it all together. So I don't know, it's like about 4 minutes on a high speed, just until you get basically the sugar to be whipped in there, so it's a little bit thicker. And now you're going to cook it on a double broiler for about 5 minutes. So this is the consistency you're looking for, kind of thick, but not like super thick, and a little bit warm. If you want to go on a bowl, after you've whisked it on here, so like I said, about 5 minutes altogether. So now you're going to whisk the egg whites, and you're going to do this until you get like soft peaks. You're going to do it for a while. When you get soft peaks, then tablespoon by tablespoon, you're going to add sugar while you're whisking, so just nice and slow. So I've whipped my butter, and I'm letting this cool off. I stirred it a little bit to see. Oh my gosh, see, this is why it's so hard to film any of these videos, because there's lots of screaming here. I'm letting this cool off. Stir it maybe to see if the whole thing is cool before you add. I can still feel that the bottom of the bowl is hot, so I'm going to let it cool off a little bit more. So when it looks approximately like this, then you're going to continue to whisk it, and then just add a little by little of the sugar. I would say a tablespoon by tablespoon, or if you have a good hand, just a little bit by little bit. So I had a really hard time with the egg whites. They were not forming soft peaks. I added some cream of tartar into them, and then I double boiled them as well. And I did this because I just get paranoid about raw eggs. I know there's a whole debate about that, but anyway, so I double boiled them. They weren't forming stiff peaks anyway, so I wasn't worried about overcooking them, but make sure you don't overcook them if you do this so that they don't turn into liquid. I did mix them while on the double broiler too with my electric mixer. Then I added the cocoa and the graham crackers, and it looks like, because of the graham crackers, because there's so many of them, it is a thick filling. Hopefully it keeps because of the cream of tartar. We will see, but that's all there's to it. Now I'm going to assemble it. Pizza. So then you put the brown layer first, then you put another one of these on, and you're going to do the yellow layer. And I'm just using these guys to spread it, just gently so you don't break the wafer cookies. And you should have enough for a layer of the brown and a layer of the yellow, and then you put a clean layer on top, and then you cut them into rectangles, and they should look like this when they're done. We are making a favorite of mine. Actually, I love creme brulee, but it is full of sugar. So I was looking at ways I could make it keto friendly, and I found this recipe on Pinterest that I wanted to try, and it's using monk fruit sweetener. So I'm going to give it a try. And well, I thought I'd give it a try, so I separated some egg yolks, and I'm using this Lacano sweetener. I'm using half a cup of the sweetener, 4 egg yolks, and you're supposed to use a teaspoon of vanilla bean paste, but I'm just using my own vanilla extract. I don't have the vanilla beans anymore, so I'm just using the extract. And super easy. I don't know if you've ever made creme brulee. It is actually really easy to make. So again, 4 egg yolks, half a cup of the sweetener, and 2 cups of heavy cream. So even the cream, I had almost 2 cups of the cream. It was just a little bit short, so I used the difference that was left over with some milk, and I have super heavy milk, so I have a non-homogenized milk, so it's a little bit fattier than a homogenized milk, and it was just like less than a quarter of a cup that I was short. And that's all the ingredients to this. So once I get all my ingredients ready, what you have to do is you have to heat up the cream so that it is simmering but not boiling. So you don't want it to be boiling. So I'll show you what that looks like in just a second. So I don't have the heat on super high. I have it kind of in between the highest and lowest. I do have a gas stove, and I have it in a non-stick pot. And like I said, I just want to get it to be hot, and just when it kind of starts to simmer but not like full on boil. And that's what you want to get it to. So while that is heating up, you want to stir it pretty much often, but not you don't have to do it constantly at the beginning. And so while that is heating up, I will go ahead and mix my eggs and my sugar and my vanilla. So I'm just going to lightly fold in not sugar, the sweetener into the eggs and add the vanilla, and just lightly, not scramble, but kind of mix and fold everything in so it's nicely combined and mixed. And then I will add the cream in to the mixture. Now the sweetener, I'm adding half of the sweetener amount, so that way you're left with a quarter of a cup for the top of your creme brulee to torch. Now, I will tell you that I would use less for the top, so I would use less than half a cup. Maybe I would save just, like, maybe I would use a quarter of a cup for the quarter of a cup for the cream is good enough, and then for the top I would just like sprinkle a little bit on top just to get that burnt flavor, but not as much as I put. The quarter of a cup for the rest of the, like for the burning part, is too much, but I followed the recipe as like I did what the recipe called for, but I won't do it next time. It was just too much at the top. Like it was too crystally. I'm sure if it was actual sugar, it wouldn't have been as crunchy, I guess, but I just didn't, I did not like the texture of it. Maybe you'll like it. So once you've gotten your cream simmering, you're going to slowly add it into the eggs and then mix slowly. You don't want it to be too hot because if it's boiling and really hot and you add it to the eggs, it's going to scramble them and make you scrambled eggs, and you don't want that. You just want them tempered enough so that they're kind of cooked but not scrambled. So you're slowly adding it, and as you're adding it, you're actually cooling it too. So just slowly adding and slowly mixing everything together, and then you're going to heat up. While you're doing that, you're also heating up some water, and you're going to pour the water into a pan, and you're going to put your ramekins into the pan, cover the ramekins kind of halfway up, not like inside, but on the like fill the pan up with water halfway up so that the ramekins are halfway up in water, and then pour your mixture into your ramekins, split it up evenly. I got about 6 ramekins almost full with the mixture. I didn't fill it up all the way, and mine are really small because they're from the dollar store, but that's okay. It's a good portion. And then you're going to bake it for about 35 to 40 minutes in your oven at 300 degrees Celsius. And you'll know that they're done when you kind of push on the creme brulee, if it kind of like jiggles around and bounces back, you'll know that it's done. It'll kind of look like a custard, so you'll know that it's done. And then you'll take them out of the oven, you'll have them cool off completely, and then you'll spray. You'll put your sugar on top or your sweetener on top, and then you're going to do your torching. So I am using my brand new torch. If you want to see the review of my torch, you can head on over to Vesna TV. That's my DIY channel. I can link the video below where I did a full review, and you can adjust your level, your fire level, basically whether you want it high or low on here, and you can even lock it in place so that way you don't have to hold the button the entire time. And then I'm going to torch them, which I'm very excited about because I don't know, it's very satisfying to me to see the sugar burn off. So the torch worked really well and they turned out really good. They look great. They taste even better. Like I said, I would just put a little bit less sugar on top because they did kind of wind up being really liquidy. But once they cooled off in the fridge and everything set, they were really, really good. Like super delicious, super creamy, and very, very, very good. So let me know what you think if you try this recipe. I will link the recipe down below where I got it from. So today I'm making a pecan pie. It is very easy to do. So I'm using a cup of sugar, a cup of dark corn syrup. You could do light or dark corn syrup. I chose to do dark. I will have the recipe linked for you guys down below. The recipe is from, well, it's from Pinterest, but it's actually from Cookies and Cups with Shelly Jaronsky. So this is her recipe from her website. So I'll have all the ingredients linked, and I'll also link her site to the description below. So once you've added the corn syrup and the sugar together, you're going to have to add some eggs, and you want the eggs to be at room temperature, so I've had them sitting here for a little bit. And you're going to need 3 eggs. And don't get the eggshell into the mixture like I do, but you know, live and learn. Once you get the eggs in there, you want to make sure that you mix everything well together. And you're going to need to have either chopped pecans, or you're going to have to chop them up yourself. But before you add the pecans, you have to add butter. The butter needs to be melted, so I've melted it here, and I'll add it to my mixture. And you also need some vanilla. I always use my homemade vanilla. I got this recipe from my sister many, many years ago, and I've had it for years. So I always use my homemade vanilla. I'm going to chop the pecans with my Pamper chopper. So then you're going to add the butter, the melted butter, into your mixture. You're going to mix everything really well together, and then you will add your pecans into there. And when you're mixing, you first want to make sure that the eggs are scrambled, and then you kind of make sure that everything is mixed together. I was just using my spatula. You can use a hand mixer, any kind of mixer, it's up to you. Once you've mixed everything together and made sure that it's like it's all blended well together, then you can add the pecans, and that is pretty much it for the filling. Now you can obviously make your own pie crust. I did not. I purchased 2 pie crusts at Walmart, and I made a pumpkin and a pecan pie. If you're looking for the pumpkin pie recipe, I will link it right above here. I show you how to make that too. It's another really simple recipe. And you just pour the mixture into the pie and you bake it. And that is it. It's very, very simple. And just follow the package directions on the pie shell that you buy, depending on what you've bought, whether you need to pre-bake it or not. I did not pre-bake mine. I just poured it into the pie shell and put it into an oven and baked it. I didn't also use a pie shield because these pies are smaller than the shield that I have. I have a shield that's for the Pampered Chef pie pan, and it's bigger than this one. So again, welcome to my channel. It's Vesna here. If you haven't been here before, I do recipes on this channel, obviously. My recipes are a lot Eastern European inspired because that's where my background is from, but I live in Canada, so it's with a Canadian flair. And then I do the traditional North American recipes like pecan pie, pumpkin pie, and those sorts of things. So if you're interested in any of those things, make sure you hit that subscribe button and hit the like button, notification bell, all that fun stuff so you can see more of my videos. When you're putting it in the oven or even pouring it, I've never made pecan pie, but it's very, very jiggly and very liquidy to the point where you think, oh my gosh, is this ever going to set? Well, it does set, and it sets beautifully, and it's delicious. But you might worry about whether it'll set because it will be very, very jiggly. I wanted to show you what the pie looks like on the inside. Once you cut it, it cuts really nicely. It's set really nicely. Very delicious. Very sweet, lots of pecans, so if you don't like pecans so much, maybe add a little bit less than what the recipe calls for. We really enjoyed it, but I could see some people thinking maybe a little bit less. Very gooey, which is what you want with a pecan pie. So if you like this recipe, make sure you hit that like button, subscribe if you haven't subscribed. This is a really easy recipe. I got it off of not Facebook, Pinterest. I modified it a little bit just because of the ingredients that I had on hand and didn't want to purchase new ones. So instead of Oreo cookie crumbs, I'm using the bear paws, which are like Oreo cookies, and I'm going to be crushing them. So you could buy the crust and then avoid having to do all of this. I'm also adding some crushed mini eggs at the top, and instead of using Cool Whip, I'm using whipping cream. That one I may, if I do it down the road, just use the Cool Whip. I don't like using the Cool Whip. I find it's not as easy to work with. Maybe I need to, I don't know. I find if I leave it to thaw too much, then it's not, then it like kind of melts. And then if I try to do it while it's still kind of hard, then I can't really spread it as much as I can. But I really like NutriWhip, but we don't have it here in Canada anymore, unfortunately. It makes me very sad. I loved it for a lot of my cakes. It just did everything it needed to do. So I'm still kind of trying to figure out something in between, but for this recipe I used the whipping cream instead of the Cool Whip. Forgot to add it to the picture, but you also need icing sugar and vanilla extract. As well, you need some chocolate pudding, some butter, and some Philadelphia cream cheese, or just cream cheese, not Philadelphia cream cheese, just cream cheese. And you also need some sort of Easter decoration, so that's where the mini eggs come in. So what I start off by doing is just crushing these bear paws. So I would say one bear paw is about 2 Oreo cookies. And I half the recipe, so I'm using half of the ingredients that you're supposed to use just because I thought it would be a little bit too big. And I'm making, for this weekend, I'm also making a cake for my son's birthday. And since we're not having parties or anything, this will all just be for us. So there's a lot of sweets. So I wanted to make something smaller. I was going to make this last weekend, but I ran out of time, so I made it this week. And I think this is a great recipe to have for Easter because it's nice and light. So I'm crushing them just using kind of a meat tenderizer. And then I will be using this as my crust. You could save an extra Oreo or 2 or 3 or 4, depending on how big you're doing it, to make the top part Oreos. I chose to, and I forgot to show this on the screen, I chose to do shaved chocolate on top instead of the broken cookies. Up to you. So you melt the butter, and then you take about half of the butter and you put it into the cookie crumble mixture just to make a crust. And then you just push it into the bottom of your glass pan. Now you wind up covering that and putting it in the fridge to cool off a little bit. If you have a different recipe for like an Oreo cookie crust, a no-bake Oreo cookie crust, you could use that recipe, and you could also use one of the pre-made ones too.
I'm not cooling these for a very long time. I'm just cooling them while I'm making the next layer. So, maybe 5, 10, not even, like 5 minutes for each layer. I had used 1 cup of whipping cream, and while I was pushing the crust in, I had my mixer whipping the cream, which I separated in half and used half of it for my top layer and half of it for the layer with the cream cheese. And so I had added icing sugar into the cream, and I just kind of eyeballed how sweet I wanted it to be. This is to your taste. I would say I used about half a cup for just the cream base, and then when I added the butter and the cream cheese into this, I added more powdered sugar, which I also did show on the list of ingredients, and I realized after. So you need whatever the recipe calls for, and then a little bit more to taste. It just depends on your personal taste. And because I had to kind of adjust it a little bit because I used the whipping cream is not sweet, whereas Cool Whip has a little bit of sweetness to it. So I would say I probably added about a cup and a half in total. No, maybe not. About a cup of sugar in total, icing sugar in total. And then I also added vanilla into that mixture, and then you put that into your mixer and you have it just kind of mixed together. And while that's mixing, I go ahead and I prepare the pudding, and I used half of the amount of milk that it called for in the original recipe for this lasagna, not what it said on the box. So just kind of keep that in mind. Use whatever the recipe calls for rather than what it says on the box. And then, like you do with regular instant pudding, you just mix it until it's done. So you just kind of keep on stirring. I think it's about 3 minutes of stirring and then you let it sit. But because I was putting it into layering it anyway, it didn't matter. I did set the pudding off to the side once it was done, and then I went and I took, by that time, the ingredients, the cream cheese, butter, icing sugar, and whipping cream were nicely mixed together, and then I layered it on top of the bottom part of the lasagna. I put this in the fridge to cool off once again, and then while that was cooling off, I took some milk chocolate chips, and I have this little garlic shaver, but I've never actually used for garlic. I use it it's a garlic peeler from Pamper Chef, not shaver. I've always just used it for chocolate. So you just kind of fill it up and you twist it until you get shaved chocolate, which I really like the way that turned out. So I like the shape of it. It's really easy to use and it takes no time. And I did roughly half a cup of chocolate. And then again, I went ahead and added a little bit more icing sugar. You can see I'm very precise, but if I had to say, that was about a tablespoon of icing sugar in there. Mix it together. This will be going on top of the pudding layer, which I haven't yet put on. So again, I set that off to the side, and I get my pudding and I put in my lasagna, and I put the pudding on top of the white layer, the cream cheese layer, and I gently kind of move it around until I get all of the lasagna covered. And after I set that on, I put the last layer of the whipping cream on just to get it all covered. Then I put my shaved chocolate and my crushed mini eggs on, and then I just layer some whole mini eggs, and that's all there is to this. It'll literally take you roughly 20 minutes, if not less. This recipe was extremely delicious, very light, and very easy to make, so I hope you guys give it a try.
So for today's recipe, I'm making my mother-in-law's baklava. So for this, you'll need 200 grams of walnuts, 200 milliliters of yogurt. I'm using the Kirkland's Greek yogurt, then 200 milliliters of oil, 4 eggs, and 200 milliliters of sugar. So your first step is to mix the eggs, yogurt, and oil in with the sugar, combine it and make kind of like a sauce. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to slowly fold these eggs over. I use too small of a bowl right here, just so that I can kind of scramble them a little bit, and then I'll mix everything in and I'll show you what that looks like once I've put it all in.
Scrambled eggs, yogurt, sugar, milk all mixed together. They mix kind of like a yogurty, eggy, sugary sauce.
Yeah, you got it. So he's right. So we mixed the oil, the yogurt, the sugar, and the egg, and we left the walnuts. We left those out, and we're gonna mix this together, and then I'll show you how we're assembling it. So obviously you'll need some phyllo pastry as well. I don't know about you guys, I don't make my own phyllo pastry. I would love to, but I don't. So what I did was I took it out of the freezer and I let it thaw, and then I've left it on the counter for about an hour just to warm up a little bit. And what I did was I opened it up and I put just some saran wrap over top, and then I wet a paper towel, which I squished out the excess water, and then I put it over top just so it holds it, just so that my dough does not dry out. Again, this is 1 pack. So here's what you want it to look like. You just want to make sure all the ingredients are mixed well together and it is fairly liquidy, and then you can start to assemble. I'm using this pan. This is a Pampered Chef bar pan. It's the large one, and I'm gonna put a little bit of oil, and then I'll start assembling. I think we got a bit of phyllo pastry there. Okay. So we've covered, my little helper over here. We've covered the pan in oil, just brushed it. You might not even have to do that. I just like to do it just in case. And then we're gonna put 2 pieces of dough on the bottom. And then we're going to put the filling, like this sauce, on every 2 doughs. And then, on every dough, and then every second or third dough, you can add the walnuts. If that makes sense. I'll show you.
1 dough is 2 doughs?
No, this is 2 doughs. So you put the 2 doughs here, and then you'll, probably a ladle will be great if you just put the ladle and or a spoon, and you just spoon it on here. And then I'm gonna put, on the first layer, I'll put the nuts, and then I'll do 2, then I'll put this, I'll do 1 sauce, and then another 1 sauce and nuts. Oh boy. Okay, so you can see I tried to cover everywhere. I tried to get into the corners here a little bit and everywhere, just to kind of make sure that it's not dry. I like a really wet baklava. I don't like the dry syrupy one, so this is a version of it. I'm sure this is not the traditional Greek or Turkish way to make a baklava, but this is the way we make it.
Yeah.
And so here I just kind of tried to spread it all over the pan, and I just kind of sprinkled the walnuts all over. You can add more or less to your liking. It's up to you. So here's my son adding the sauce. He's trying to get it all over the pan. Now he's gonna put a little bit more over here. And then we're gonna just use our spoon to kind of spread it around. And you wanna do this very, very gently because the dough is gentle, and you're gonna do it all around the pan. Try to get in all of the corners and everywhere. So I added another layer of the dough, and now I'll do the sauce and the walnuts. So remember, on the kind of, you're doing it every other one you want to do the nuts, or every third one you want to do the nuts. And so remember, when you're sprinkling them, you would just want to kind of get them all over so you don't have like a clump in the middle and then not a lot on the sides. And if you need a spoon, or use your hand to kind of move it around a little bit.
I'm sprinkling it all.
Good job, Gabby. So if you find that you're running low on sauce or running low on walnuts, make sure then when you're putting the sauce on, or the sauce, you're kind of just spreading it with your spoon like that and not adding as much as I was at the beginning. It just depends on what you think you're going to need and how big how many phyllo doughs you have in there and how many of them fall apart. So I had 2 that kind of ripped, but they didn't rip a lot, so I still wound up using them, but kind of figure that out. And the trick with this is you kind of find out how much you want to be putting depending on how soggy you want it to be, I guess, how wet you want it to be. So just kind of play around with it. I've done it in the past where I've alternated. So on one of the layers, I put the sauce on the outside. On the second one, I put it in the middle. And then I've done it where I've spread it. So I just kind of alternate, and it seems to work out. So I just wanted to show you, if you are using your spoon to kind of spread it, just make sure you're doing it really lightly because you will rip it. So just in case it's happening to you guys, you could try and use a brush, or just do it really gently and just kind of like drizzle it over. That might be easier. So this is the last layer with the layering of those sauce and walnuts. Then you want to leave 3 doughs. So I've left 3 doughs, and you're going to put those on the very top. You're going to put the rest of whatever you have left over of your sauce over top. And then you're going to just sprinkle a little, just maybe like a tablespoon of sugar over top. And then you're going to bake it in the oven for about 15 minutes on 350 degrees. This depends on your oven. You want to have the dough turn like a yellowy color. It's kind of white now, as you can see, so you want it to be a yellow color. Okay, so I said 1 tablespoon of sugar. I'm going to say you need two generous tablespoons of sugar, and then you're just going to sprinkle it all over top. So you can see the sugar there. And I forgot to mention, you're going to cut this into however you want your pieces to be. You're going to cut it before you bake it, and you're going to cut it like in the same grooves after it's been baked. And that way all of the juices will kind of go everywhere. So I'm going to do straight lines this way, and then I'm going to do kind of like a diagonal line. So then when you're cutting, I've decided not to cut diagonally. You're kind of going in and out, in and out. Don't go like this because you're going to rip your dough. If you want to do this before you put your last layer of liquid on, you can do that as well. Your hands won't stick as much to it, but you still have to be careful. Just be careful. Okay, and you can see I've cut the straight lines, the horizontal and vertical lines this way, kind of like a checkered pattern, in the oven, again, for 15 minutes. Or more at 350 degrees, just keep an eye on it depending on when it starts to get yellow. So now, once your baklava cooks, you need to make the syrup. Both need to cool off a little bit. So I've taken the baklava out of the oven. I'm going to put 200 milliliters of sugar and the same of water. It's cooling off. I'm giving it extra time because I have the Pampered Chef stones. So the stones take a little longer to cool off, so they'll keep it warm a little bit longer. This is kind of what you want it looking like when it's done. It could be even a little bit darker if you want it to be darker, but kind of gives you an idea. And then I'm going to melt the sugar and water, just make it combine into kind of like a juicy syrup. You don't want it to be too thick, just so that the sugar is melted, and then let it cool off. And then you're going to pour it over top of this. Before you pour, you want to cut it down, but I'm not going to cut it down until this is cooling off. Until this thing cools off. So here's what you kind of want it to look like. It's a nice clear syrup. So I'm going to stop it And that like literally took like maybe 4 minutes, 3 minutes. Depends on your stove. I have a gas stove, so it might be a bit faster, or just depends on your stove, I guess, and your pan. So we're gonna let this cool off, and I'm only gonna let it cool off for like maybe two minutes while I cut that and get everything ready. So then you're just going to pour this over the whole thing, making sure that you get all of the like little nooks right here. And I took a piece out, not because you have to take a piece out, but I just wanted to try a piece. And if you find it's not enough, by all means make some more. I find that this is more than enough. It also depends how big you make your pan too, like how big your pan is and how many layers you do, all of that stuff. But this is more than enough. And I will pour the whole thing, so I do want it kind of sitting in the syrup. There we go. And I'm getting a little bit on my countertop too, excuse me. I forgot to put it in frame. There we go. And that's it. All done. Obviously, before you can enjoy it, you want to make sure it cools off completely. So let this cool off on its own. Don't touch it. Don't do anything with it. Just let it do its thing. It's going to absorb all of that syrup. So you can see how much is in there. So let it absorb it fully, and then you can eat it once it's done. I have some butter warming up here. Just in front of this pan because the pan is still warm. And then it'll be for the next recipe.
Well, I hope you enjoyed this. I unfortunately did not take a picture of the baklava on a plate and us enjoying it, but it was delicious. And the recipe will be will be written out below. Thank you.